Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in again. I am Kaylee Batesman, the Content Director at SheCanCode, and today we are discussing allyship in tech. We're delving into the critical topic of allyship in the tech industry, and today I've got the wonderful Phil Ray, CEO of Totalmobile with me. He's an advocate for diversity and inclusion, so Phil is here to share his insights on creating supportive environments where everyone can thrive. Welcome Phil, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm loving the introduction. Wonderful. That's superb. What a great way to warm us up. Nice to meet you.
We like everybody to feel nice and welcome on this podcast. And I also had a previous podcast with some of your team, so I can vouch for the wonderful on this one.
Oh, lovely.
Can we kick off today with a little bit of context about you, your journey into tech, and a little bit about your role at Totalmobile, if that's okay?
Yeah, no worries at all. Yeah, I mean the journey goes back a long time. I mean, I originally did electronic engineering at Nottingham University, all many years ago now. But it was the time that computers were becoming a big thing. It was about 19, well, it must be 80, 84 around that time. So I started to explore the idea of moving into a computer career, moved into sales support, then moved into leadership, running consulting teams, and then as a result of that, running businesses. And most recently, I've been running businesses owned by private equity. And then before this role, I ran an AIM listed company for just north of 5 years. We eventually sold it to a trade buyer in the spring of last year, and then was fortunate to secure this role in October it was last year.
Amazing. And it's interesting that you have a techie background. Was that something, what was it at that point? Were you were you one of those technical children that just really love techie things? Did you have a family members that perhaps worked in tech?
Well, no, I didn't. My dad was a council plumber and heating engineer, so there was no,
Oh,
I guess, practical if nothing else.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but I was, at school I had. I mean, it's amazing how teacher influences do shape people's lives. And I had a brilliant physics teacher, Mr. Hunter. Still remember his name. That just shows, doesn't it? Absolutely awesome individual, and I just loved puzzle solving and mathematics and physics. A lot of it is about solving puzzles. So I think it is sort of an innate character trait, and it's one that's lived with me. What motivates me is solving puzzles, and there's sometimes technology puzzles, there's sometimes people puzzles, and when you're running a business, it's business puzzles, and I love it. That's what keeps me inspired and gives me energy.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting that actually, because we have so many ladies on here that talk about when you step into leadership, what that is like, and that they have worked in tech, but they move away from that, and they almost have to make a decision to start with the people puzzles and then move on to the business puzzles, and that's a really nice way of summing up basically what they mean and having to make that decision. Can I ask you a little bit about what was that like for you when you moved from, you started off quite technical and then you moved to people management and now actually you've moved on to business management. How have you found that becoming a leader?
Oh, it's a really good question. And on that journey, I took an MBA, and I'll explain why. So I was given, I was obviously half decent at sales and engaging with people, and looking after teams of consultants and managing people. And then I was sort of thrown into this role, like you're now a manager. And I remember distinctly the conversation. I said, well, I've never done management before, and you're just expecting me to sort of turn up tomorrow and be a manager. What do you do? And they were perfectly confident I'd pick up the skills by osmosis and working with great managers. And I thought that's not quite right. That's I don't want to make my own mistakes. It'd be a good idea to learn from other people's mistakes. So I undertook an MBA. I sort of paid for half, got the company to pay for half, and spent I think it was 3.5 amazing years at Henley. To become the best manager I could be, rather than just a manager, and that stood me in incredibly good stead for the last 20 or so years. And it decoded some of the language. And I think it's quite interesting. Most times you step into new roles, and a large part of the challenge is to understand the language that's being talked around the table. And you hear that when I talk to talk about women in industry, that what conversations are happening around the board table, what language are they using, what frameworks are they bringing to the table, and decoding some of that is incredibly useful to remove those barriers to entry in those rooms. So yes, that was sort of part of the transition. I did an
Yeah.
MBA, and it was very useful.
Good. Yeah, that's brilliant advice. And you're absolutely right. I think there is that that panic sometimes when you're stepping into leadership and what's expected of you, especially when you first become a manager. We have that conversation on here with the guests on here so often about even expectations. So many of the guests on here have said, I stepped into a leadership role and I thought everybody thought I had all the answers and that I
Yes,
should know everything. And just being able to step back and think, actually, I don't need to. That's what my
actually
team
one
is
of
for.
actually one of the best approaches you can take. I mean, I'm a real believer in being genuine and authentic. I think that's so important. Don't try to be someone that you're not. And the wonderful thing about being a leader is that you're permitted to ask the stupid question. Yeah, there's no such thing as a stupid question. It's just a question. Don't ask the same question twice because then you're not listening to people or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's really it's a really powerful thing. Don't ever assume that you're expected to know it all. You've got talented people around you. Jack Welch. I remember seeing a presentation by Jack Welch who created this titan of industry, GEC, I think it was, or GE, and he's in this presentation that he gave, he said the most important thing for him was recruit highly talented people and get out of their way.
Yeah.
And that's what a brilliant piece of advice.
Yeah, such good advice. Yeah, to and also just to be able to ask your team. People love to be asked things. If people think, oh, you know what, I'm being asked that because I know I'm really good at that, or I know my strengths, then yeah, it's so important to. I love that advice to hire them and get out of their way. It's
Yeah, well, especially in tech because it's changing so quickly.
mm,
So it's really important to embrace that change. Always be learning, be curious. Those things are they stood me in good stead, if nothing else.
yeah. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about allyship. Can we kick off with what does allyship mean to you when we look at the tech industry?
Well, it's quite interesting. I've only sort of come across this term the last couple of months. It's not sort of like a common word that I've heard. So that may be a challenge for people like me in my position is to really be curious about this space. But I would connect this with coaching and inviting people into the room and sharing your experiences. And I've tried to do that my entire career, and again that networking piece and asking help of others, but also reciprocating. That's what I think this all means.
Yes, definitely. And that thing on as you said, coaching and networking and it's all sharing your story as well. It's so important. And again, it's something that comes up on here often about people don't always realize how valuable their story actually is, even if you're just sharing with somebody that you felt a certain way when you stepped into leadership, and just sharing that with somebody else that is on the cusp of moving into leadership can just really support somebody, and you don't even realize that you've helped them in that way. And if it is something that is a little bit more formal like coaching and helping somebody into their next position and their leadership position, then yeah, it's all valuable. And I suppose it's just being a bit more mindful about it. It's interesting though that you've only just heard of the term, because you said that like, you know what, it happens at our company anyway. It doesn't have a term, it's just kind of like, it's an interesting term, but we've been doing that anyway.
Yeah, and I think good leaders break down hierarchies. Again, very good piece of advice I was given at an early stage of my career is draw organization charts upside down. So most organization charts have the CEO at the top and then the next layer down, and then the worker bees, if you like, at the bottom. That's totally the wrong way to think about a company. Turn it upside down. the people that really matter are the people in the front line, the people doing those day-to-day tasks that interact with customers. And the CEO doesn't exist unless all those people are doing a brilliant job. So draw an organization chart upside down, and then all of a sudden you realize that hierarchies, you want to squash them because you want to get close to the customer and close to the person making an impact to the customer, rather than being many, many layers away from that and actually not understanding what's going on. So yeah, draw the organization chart upside down. And then that helps remove those used to be physical barriers, doors to an office, that you don't actually have now. It's connections on things like this and Teams. But yeah, remove those barriers so that people can feel and can interact with each other in a very free and straightforward way. And then you'll get that coaching happening by accident, which is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, especially with leadership, you are right. Some companies, you feel like the leadership team, people don't know them, or you can't approach them and ask them a question about something. And if the leadership is so disconnected from the worker bees, as you said, then that it really trickles down as well as to what the management team are doing day in, day out. That trickles down into the rest of the team. So you have to make sure that, if there is coaching going on or networking, at least that there is that strong connection there, and that strong allyship between everybody in the company is so important.
You
And
bet.
why is it important that men are a part of the equality conversation, do you think?
Uh, I think the answer to that lies in some of the forums I've seen over recent years in the technology world. So I attended it was an award ceremony last week, and it was the great and the good of small to medium sized companies. It was run by this analyst company, and you scan the room, mainly men. So if you, I used to attend a conference run for the world of telecommunications up in Glen Eagles, run at a Scottish golf course. Lots of managed service providers, which is my previous world. Probably 300 or 400 individuals in the room, 80% men. So that particularly that sort of leadership and senior level, there is still a massive disparity, and that needs to change. Now we are very fortunate. We're the same. Our board is predominantly male. We have a brilliant chief people officer. You've met Jill. She's awesome. And we were incredibly pleased actually to look at the next level down, our senior management team. So those people who report to my team, 50% women, 50% male. So I think the glass ceilings are slowly being smashed, but it's really important that we keep that journey going, so that over time the people around my table, there's a much better balance. I think it feels like progress is being made, but that's from my perspective as a male white individual at a senior level. But there's still work to do. So I think it's very important. And also, I think it is all about that, having a conversation with lots of different perspectives. So whether that's different races, different religious backgrounds, male, female. I think having all of those perspectives in the room when you're making decisions, you'll probably make a better decision as a result.
Definitely, yes. And I did meet the amazing Jill, and she is awesome. And she did tell me that you're very lucky to have 50-50 male female at that management level, and as well, having Jill obviously recently joined the board, but how inspiring that is for all levels of your company to see ladies at all levels, so they can think of their next position. And sometimes we had a similar discussion about sometimes when you see ladies at all board level and you're very junior, it's quite hard to relate to that and how to get to that position. So having them spread out through your company as well is so important. So you can think about your next position and then what that one will look like and the next one will look like. That you have that at Totalmobile. So you have role models at all levels. is so important. Can I ask you a little bit about the role that men play in being allies? So, in your opinion, what role do men specifically play in being allies for women in tech, do you think?
Um, so I saw this question on your list, and I was sort of struggling a little bit with it because I don't, in my own brain, segment male, female. I don't go, that's a particular cohort and that's a separate cohort. Now that may be, again, it's very easy from my perspective to do that. But in terms of men and allyship and coaching, I think our role is to I don't know how you'd phrase it. It's to spot the differences, encourage an understanding of the differences, and then determine whether those differences are justified or not, and then start building those bridges between different communities. So I think that's probably the most concise way of answering this one, but not from great scientific analysis. I've never sort of put those into separate buckets.
Yes, definitely. And you are right. It's almost honing in once you've noticed those differences, honing in on the advantages and the benefits of having a diverse team, as you said before, and how that can really improve a team and a business. I think as well, some of the best managers that I've had that have been male have been really good sponsors of me. And it's that when you're not in the room, what are people saying about you? So sometimes it's that you might not even realize that you're doing it as an ally, but if you have fantastic females that are part of your company and you don't even realize that you are a sponsor of them, that when they're not in the room and you say, oh, I know, she did something fantastic, or Jill is doing amazing things as part of the board, then you are naturally a great sponsor for those female leaders, and you don't even realize you're doing it. And I found that some of the best people, that some of my best managers have all been male. I've had some brilliant male sponsors.
Yeah, I would say this to anyone, throughout the business, give people a reason to say that. Step forward, volunteer, put yourself in uncomfortable situations,
Yeah.
accept you don't know everything, but have a go. Those character traits are very endearing when you're a leader. They're the sort of people you hunt for in your organization and try and promote them and get them to do more. So if you can give leaders of all shapes and sizes those reasons to advocate for you, then it can only do you well in terms of your career.
Yes, definitely. I wanted to ask you a little bit about how men can best support gender diversity initiatives. The reason why I wanted to ask you that is a lot of our male allies that we talk to at SheCanCode, they tend to say things like, the only time that I end up doing anything like that is when I got called into a room for a training session on things that I should not say in the workplace. They almost see it as a negative thing. And it's far more important to be involved in these gender initiatives, to be moving the needle and to be helping in that area, instead of just thinking, sometimes you mentioned a lot of conferences, you'll have a women in tech talk and then the ladies will disappear into a room on their own and talk about diversity as an issue, but men are not always part of that conversation. But it's so important, isn't it, to be part of that and to support the gender initiatives and the diversity initiatives that are happening within your own company, regardless of your gender.
Yeah, I think it's again that your point about language is a really interesting one. That there are we can often be too sensitive, and therefore be very cautious about the language we use, whether that's about religion or race or gender. The society can frown upon the use of inappropriate language, and it's not a function of inbuilt discriminatory behaviour. It's just I've used the wrong word, so you create this nervousness about talking about these sort of things. And if you can strip that away and say, look, this is a safe space. It doesn't matter if you trip up and you've used the wrong phraseology, but nonetheless, we're all hoping that we can support each other. So I think that's the first thing is, create those safe spaces so you can have the proper conversations. And then the second piece, probably my best example. I've been called into the room. So my owners, Beaumont, they've created this initiative, Women in Leadership, and it's a brilliant initiative. And what they've encouraged us to do is to coach people not from within our own organisation, so they paired me up as a CEO of Totalmobile with a senior individual in another of their portfolio companies, and I'm having a conversation with her every 6 to 8 weeks, and the whole point of that is for her to bring some experiences to the table and ask me questions, and have a very open conversation about how we can develop her career. And I'm learning from her, and she's learning from me. It's very much a two-way thing. So that's a brilliant proactive initiative by the portfolio company to continue that journey for the women across the business. Bit of a long answer, but what was fascinating at the beginning of that, they did a briefing, and the briefing was, well, all of the research is suggesting certain sort of attributes. And I think that briefing for me was really useful. There were sort of 2 or 3 very obvious things that were quite sort of there were sort of moments. So the first one was women are often judged by their image and the way they present themselves rather than the substance of the thing they're saying. I thought that was a really fascinating observation, and I look at what I've done over the past. You sort of, oh yes, I have done that. She looked brilliant standing up in front of the room, convincing these customers to do things. Well, that was a looked, not the substance she was saying. She carried herself well. She presented. That's really flawed thinking, right? Yeah. And the other one was about women putting themselves forward. So this was the other, I think, really interesting one. Is that again, this was research based. A lot of women feel they have to be perfect before they apply for things, whereas men will typically have a go. They'll go, don't really know, but I'll have a go, and if it doesn't work, that's fine. Really stark differences. The research was saying the stark differences. So once you know these things, you go, that explains it. When we look at candidate lists, if they're predominantly male, it might not be because all the men think they can do the job. They're just having a go.
Yeah.
And the women aren't
even putting themselves.
Yeah, that's right. But the women aren't even putting themselves in the room.
Yeah.
Because they're sitting there going, I'm not sure I can do this. So those, I think some of the education would really help in terms of potentially helping us remove the barriers for people, for women entering that room.
Definitely, and to that education as well in a safe space, as you said at the start, and that it's not ever a negative thing, but to point out those things that you suddenly went, oh, you know what, I hadn't even realized that. And most people, once you hold the mirror up to them, they go, hadn't even thought about it, or it's not something that you thought about outside of your day job. We're all in our day jobs doing what we need to do within the business, that you might not necessarily be thinking of those things, and that it's never, usually a company never encourages their team to learn those things because they think they've been doing something wrong. It's just to encourage everybody to be more aware of their team, male or female, and how they work, and how they prefer to work and progress in their own careers. So important to be at a company that provides a safe space for that.
Yeah.
Something that we say on here a lot as well is that it's more than a Slack group. So when we started this podcast, one of the first ladies said to me that it's more than ticking that box of, we've opened a Women in Tech Slack group and we put conversations in there. She said it's that feeling when you come to work every day. You nailed it with the safe space. You have to feel like you're safe enough to raise concerns if you have concerns, or to talk to somebody about something, or if you do say something and you think, oh gosh, I shouldn't have said that you're not going to get pulled over the coals because of it. And it's actually how you feel every day in the workplace, rather than, we opened a Women in Tech Slack group. Put your questions in there.
I think that we as a society are becoming more self-aware, and that whole stiff upper lip and leave it in a box and don't talk about it because you might get frowned upon. I'd like to hope those boxes are being smashed, and we're having those conversations. And whether that's men's health, whether it's stress, whether it's diversity, whether it's race and the treatment of different religious groups, all of those conversations are conversations that, if you have them, it breaks down barriers, it improves teamwork, it removes stressful situations, and hopefully, as a business leader, create stronger businesses. So I think I'd like to hope that the world is becoming more socially aware. Now, that comes with its own challenges, as we talked about, that fear of saying the wrong thing. But I think the benefits do far outweigh the potential challenges.
Yes, definitely. And when you do land yourself in a culture that a business culture that where you can feel that you are more likely to stay. And you can tell that in the companies that can really retain their staff and people that are not necessarily job hopping. You're always going to get those people, but it isn't something that happens overnight. It is something that companies really have to work at to make sure it's in the DNA of their culture.
It can't just be a poster on the wall.
Yeah,
I think I've seen cultural initiatives, and they become a collection of words that were posted on the wall, and you failed then. It
yeah.
has to be how you behave, what you do every day, the conversations you have, what you reward and what you frown upon. It has to be part of your DNA as a business, not just a post on the wall.
Definitely, definitely. Couldn't agree more. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about, do you have any advice that you would give to individuals who want to become better allies but are unsure where to start? We touched upon that a little bit. Like sometimes men might want to get involved in that conversation, they're not sure where to start, or they might say the wrong thing. Do you have any advice for those people?
Um, I think if you're it's that connections, building those connections, and then they become coaching conversations, and they become ways to jointly improve. And I think if you're open about I am happy to have a conversation about this, I'm happy to coach in this space, I'm happy to embrace this potential change. I think if you sort of spread that word as part of your daily communication with the outside world, I think people will latch onto that and drag you in the room, because you're someone who they can see can benefit you. So I think it's almost part of your personal PR. Probably the best way to phrase it. Make it part of your conversation, and then people will latch onto it. I don't think. Well, my own personal view is, I don't think it's a case of searching on the internet and finding what company is doing it. I think it's more by osmosis, by those conversations. I think you'll end up in the right places.
Yes, definitely. And what other companies are doing as well. I mean, you mentioned about speaking with a lady who is in a different company and, sharing that and sharing your advice and coaching with other ladies that are not actually within your own company as well, is so, so important to get involved in the conversation that is not always just moving forward the culture within your own company, but beyond that as well, and learning from others.
Well, I'm a great believer. I have, I'm a logical thinker. I come from a scientific background, but I do believe in, what you donate to the outside world. Karma. I believe in karma.
Yeah.
You scatter a few seeds, and some of those seeds will grow, and you'll get paid back. And it's not a trade. It's not a I'm doing this, I expect this return. It's in the way you live and the way you work, the way you communicate. If you sow those seeds, then some of those will grow, and you'll get payback somehow. And it'll be literally through karma. The role I'm in now, I did one big career shift. No, those two situations happened not because I applied for a role on the internet that sort of fits with what I do. It was a friend of a friend of a friend who said, Phil's a good bloke. Well, you should have a chat with him. And that's a classic case of, spread the seeds, say the right things, put the word about that you're open to these things, and it will come back to you. It will come back to you. I'm a great, but I've got evidence in my own career. Evidence. It works. Karma exists.
Yeah, it's so important, especially when you move into leadership as well, and to be to remember that you don't always realize it when you first enter the workplace, that how those connections, especially years later, can really help you along the way, even if you don't realize it when you first start out. And you're right, to spreading the good seeds out there to help other companies, especially in the realm of diversity, and women in tech. Because I wanted to touch upon that a little bit about looking ahead and what you hope for in terms of diversity within the tech industry, and what steps can we all be taking to get there. You touched upon it there about, karma, and basically not pulling up the ladder behind you and always remembering to look back and think, you know what, if somebody had helped me, the level below me or the level below that, then that can really help in terms of increasing diversity within the industry as well. And just always remembering to look back and think, how can I help somebody else behind me? Not necessarily male or female, but do you think that, do you have any hopes in terms of diversity in the tech industry, and how we can get there?
Yeah, as I say, I think there have been huge strides made, but there's still a massive opportunity. And I use the word opportunity advisedly. If we can encourage a company of all types, then I think we'll be a stronger company, and that is an absolute truism. And if you look across, my career over time, go back to the 1980s when I first started work, and there was a degree of segmentation by background and by social class, by race, and also by gender. So if you look at the roles, it was classic, PAs, marketing, personnel, they were all women, and then tech, sales, more aggressive related roles, if you like, but
Yeah.
all men. And that was sort of just, that was the world we lived in. Now those barriers between those different worlds have dramatically changed. And my head of marketing is a male, and that's brilliant. That's how it should be. But if you look across our organisation and you did a sort of a gender analysis in our development teams, for example, it's still predominantly male, and there's no justified reason for that. It's just that at the moment that's how it is. So I think there's still a lot of opportunity to address those inequalities, by encouraging applicants of all shapes and sizes into those roles to continue that evolution. As I think we're on a journey, but there's still work to do.
Definitely. And because you mentioned the roles earlier, as well, about ladies that feel sometimes they shouldn't apply for something if they don't tick all those boxes. And just when a company is more mindful of that, that they're careful not to include all of the little details on a job application, just in case, ladies rule them out and think, I can't do all of those things. So I'm not going to take the chance. So again, it's just holding up the mirror sometimes and saying, did you know that all of your job applications actually include all of these bullet points and all this language that might turn a lot of female applicants away from certain roles, and to actively be looking at which departments are very male dominated, and how you can start making a plan and changing that is so important. And we notice at SheCanCode as well that the companies that we work with, we can tell the ones that are ticking a gender box and they feel like we've done our bit. We put our logo somewhere and we ticked our box. And then the majority of our partners, thankfully, are those that are in it for the long run. They work with us all year. They want to be involved in lots of different things, and they realize that you can't solve that problem overnight. You can't change your workforce overnight and be more diverse and have all those wonderful ideas and cultures throughout your company. And it is something that you have to do day in, day out, and to be able to say then eventually that you have a 50-50 split management team. It's not something that you can do overnight, and you have to take a step back sometimes as a company and say, what, we're going to try and make change, and this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, change takes time. I mean, if you think about our staff attrition between 10 and 15% per annum. So that if you divide 100 by 15, it's what, 7, 8. So that's an 8-year journey to refresh that workforce. So it does take time, and it's, as you say, it's not a one and done sort of activity. It's a way of thinking, and if your way of thinking is we encourage diversity, you don't have to have the perfect fit, but having a decent fit is good enough if the character is right, and the personality is right. Then the technology piece, I could probably train them. So you don't have to be perfect. And again, going back to my early career, one of the recruitment frameworks I was always taught was attribute, skills, and knowledge are the 3 dimensions in terms of recruitment. And actually, knowledge that you can teach people as long as they've got the right attributes and the right skills. So that's their character, their desire to learn, their aspiration, their ambition. If they've got those things, I can teach the knowledge.
Yeah.
And in technology, if you think about it, a lot of it, the knowledge piece, that's constantly changing. So as long as I've got an ambitious and driven and focused and can-do attitude type of person, I'll give them the knowledge. I can put them on a course.
Yeah.
I can't teach the ambition and drive. That's an innate thing. To recruit for that and give them the knowledge. And I'd say that to women, right? That you don't have to have 100% fit to that role spec in terms of knowledge. The most important thing when you walk in the room is to have that. Give it to me. I'll make it happen.
Yes, I love that. I had a similar conversation with one of our partners recently who a lady interviewed for the position. She said that she just thought, I'll give it a go, but wasn't quite sure because the job required C++ and she had to go through an interview process and a C++ test. And she said, I'd never done it. I didn't know a line of code. So before the interview, she learned C++. And to an extent where she just barely passed this test, and the employer really didn't care because they called her up and said, we were so impressed that you learned C++ just because of this interview, that you are the type of person that we could throw anything at and you would learn it. And they hired her on that basis, and they taught her everything that they needed her to know. But
what a phenomenal,
exactly what you said.
You've just played back that I've been recruiting in the right way for the last 20 years.
Yes, yeah. When you hear that person that says, I tried and I learned something and I'm getting it, then yes, you are absolutely bang on there. Just that is the person that you need on your team. And good employers do recognize that, definitely.
Well, it's a wonderful, there was a little video that I got sent recently which talked about how all the programming languages have changed over time. And if you look at, and that is only cycling even faster. So if you believe that the reason you exist is because you're a C++ coder, you can guarantee if you looked at that timeline, C++ will be falling down the list of relevance, and there'll be something else that will be like the latest thing. What was it, Python? I think is, there's loads of the different languages, and actually the skill is the ability to pick the next language and learn and develop that, rather than just be a C++ guru. So that ability to learn is actually more important than being a specialist in any one thing.
Yes.
That's fine. Yeah.
Definitely, because you are right. It does take a certain person to be in the tech industry as well. It's constantly changing. It's not like you land your first job and that's it. The really good people, or the people that want to stick around, are constantly learning and developing. And you are right. Once you get those individuals on your team, it's finding ways to keep them on your team, which some companies are really, really good at. Some not so much, but that's when good talent exits and goes elsewhere. So.
Absolutely.
Phil, we are already out of time. I could keep talking to you on this topic for a lot longer this afternoon, but we are already out of time, I'm afraid. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
And you, it's been very enjoyable.
Thank you. And to everybody listening, as always, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.